few hands in, we're dealt pocket aces. The under the gun player straddles to 20. I raise to 50 from under the gun +1. Under the gun +2 calls, he indicates that he's a viewer of the channel. We're heads up out of position, the flop comes 8-6-3 with 2 clubs, our streak of minimally flopping an overpair with pocket aces continues. I bet 100 to take the opponent to value town. If he calls, he can have quite a few flush draw combos, especially since we don't have the ace of clubs. He can also have plenty of overpairs to the board given that I was first to act pre-flop, and he called my raise being second to act. He should have a narrow range containing some premiums. The turn is the 5 of clubs completing the flush draw. This board doesn't connect well with my range as the pre-flop raiser. I check for pot control. The opponent checks back, maybe he doesn't have a flush after all. The river is the 7 of diamonds putting 4 to the straight out there. Not an ideal run out for us. I check, hoping that we can get to showdown cheaply. Instead, under the gun +2 bets 280. This is a very annoying spot to be in. I wish I knew more about the opponent, but I know nothing. I often call in these spots and lose. I bet fairly large on the flop, got called, then everything has gotten there. I only have $150 invested, tons of hands beat me, my hand has been reduced to a bluff catcher. I'm not sure what the opponent would really be bluffing with here. It's hard to lay down aces, but in this situation, it's probably the best play.
Alright man, you win. You win.
Oh no, we're shown pocket deuces. We in fact did get bluffed. The day isn't off to the best start that I've ever had.
Nice bluff, nice bluff.
Thanks, man.
In this one, we're dealt 9-8 of hearts in the small blind. Nearly everyone is straddling to 40, by the way. The straddle is on now. It's under the gun +1, raises to 140. She's probably the least experienced player at the table and is doing some wild things. I called to get involved with her. The straddler calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop, out of position. Hold on to your bucket hats. It comes king 7-5 with 2 hearts. We've got a straight flush draw. I check. Under the gun checks. The pre-flop raiser continues firing for 200. I'm debating whether I want to check raise now or not. Ultimately, I call because it's for a small amount and I have so many outs, I don't necessarily need to turn my hand into a semi-bluff. Under the gun also calls. 3 of us are still in it. The turn is the deuce of clubs, mostly a blank, but there's a second flush draw out there. I check. Under the gun checks. Under the gun +1 bets 700. I'm running out of time to make a big hand. On the flop, my sense was that neither opponent really had much. I took more of a passive line then. I choose the more aggressive line here, and I check raise to 2,000. Oh, yeah. I've got moves for days. The opponents at the higher stakes don't know what hit them, except under the gun shoves for 5,800. Oh, shit. Give me back my 2,000. That was a joke bet. It wasn't intended to be taken seriously, although I can see how maybe someone could have mistaked it for a serious bet. The situation gets worse as under the gun shove is followed by under the gun +1 shove for 4,200. This is disgusting.
2 all-ins? How much? Can I get counts please for both?
I had both players covered to start the hand. I asked for counts so I can do some calculations at the table. There's about 13,000 in the middle, and I have to call 3,800 more for a chance to see 1 card. I have no clue what to put the opponents on. The under the gun player's line in particular is odd since he just flatted the flop bet after 2 people put money in, then cold 3-bet shoves the turn. It's very suspicious, and it seems like he could also be on a draw. If he or the under the gun +1 player have a better heart draw, I won't have nearly as many outs. There's some likely scenarios where I only have 4 outs. For example, if one player has ace deuce of hearts and the other player has ace king or a set, I'd only have a 9.5% chance of winning, and I need over 9-to-1 pot odds for calling to be profitable. In this hand, I'm getting about 3.4-to-1 on a call. I need to win more than 22.5% of the time for a call to be profitable. I don't see how I could be getting it in against 2 players while having more equity than that. After tanking a long time, I realized that I can't stick around.
Alright, fold.
The players agree to run it twice. I'm sick to my stomach thinking about the fold that I just made. If I would have ended up winning a $17,000 pot by making a call that I didn't make, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping for a while. Please don't put a heart or a 6-out dealer. The first river is the king of diamonds pairing the board. We almost certainly would have lost that one. The second river is the 3 of diamonds. We would have completely bricked both runouts and lost an extra 3,800. It's time for the reveal. Under the gun shows queen 7 of clubs for a pair of 7s and a missed club draw. That's not going to win it. Under the gun +1 shows pocket deuces for a turn set to scoop the entire pot. I mentioned earlier that I needed 22.5% equity for a call to be profitable. Now that we know the other 2 players' cards, we see that even without either opponent having better hearts, I only had 21.4% equity. I'm very glad that I folded, but I'm a little annoyed at myself for not check raising the flop since I likely could have won the pot at that point before both players drastically improved. 10 minutes later, we've got ace-king offsuit in the big blind. The hijack raises to 120. He's a solid pro. He's in for maximum pain, administered by us though. I 3-bet to 500. The hijack is okay with the price increase. He calls. Playing ace-king out of position in a big pot isn't super fun, especially if we don't make a pair. Bad news, we don't make a pair. The good news is that the flop comes 8-7-4 all clubs. We've got 2 overs and a draw to the ace-high flush. I'm likely going to be repping the flush at some point, whether we get there or not. For now, I downbet to 400 to weed out all the opponent's non-pair holdings that don't contain a club. This doesn't quite do the trick. The hijack calls. Plan B to win this pot is to make a flush, or at least a pair. The turn is the 4 of spades. We don't improve, but we still have a key card to help us get out of this hand with a victory. I slide in a $2,000 pot-sized bet as a semi-bluff. You might even be able to get some overpairs to fold that don't have a club. Hopefully, we're not already up against a flush or a full house. I can see it in the opponent's face that he's not fully buying our story. On the outside, I'm trying to remain calm. On the inside, I'm rooting hard for a fold. Ultimately, the opponent lays down his hand. We get it through for a big win. Maybe we got a similar or even slightly worse hand to fold, or maybe we outright stole the pot. We'll never know for sure. All I know is that it feels good to have lots of black chips coming back our direction. Next we've got ace-10 offsuit in middle position. It's a rare non-straddled hand. I raised to 60. The hijack 3-bets to 200 in an effort to crush me like I'm a turtle and he's Mario. The hijack is a pretty aggressive player who 3-bets a lot. No one's putting too much stock into his actions so far. The button cold calls. I'd like to get involved against her. I make a lighter call than normal with my hand due to the circumstances. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. The dealer puts out 10-5 deuce rainbow. We've got top, we check. The 3-better checks. The button checks behind. It is a great sign for us. We should have the best hand. The turn is the 3 of spades. It's pretty much a blank. We pick up the wheel draw though. I bet 400 for value. The hijack quickly folds. The button isn't so fast to let go. Eventually, she calls by putting in a stack of $20 chips. It's down to heads up. The river is the 8 of diamonds. It's another decent card for us because we still have top pair. I bet 800. I can possibly get called by a worse 10 or maybe something like pocket 9s. This player doesn't like folding, and the way this has been played, it's tough to imagine that we don't have the best hand. After 35 seconds, the player tosses in a yellow calling chip. I'm happy about it. I turn over what should be the winner. The opponent tosses their cards face down in the muck. I get the sense that we got called very light by a curious, non-believing player. It hasn't been a smooth ride. We're doing alright today though. Here we're dealt ace-10 suited in the small blind. The straddle's on. Under the gun +1 raises to 120. The hijack calls. I call. The under the gun straddler calls. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It's 10-7-4 with 2 diamonds and a heart. We have top and a backdoor flush draw. I check. The under the gun player checks. The early position raiser also checks. This is a really important aspect because it means he probably won't have anything too strong. Otherwise, he would have bet to avoid giving 3 other players a chance to see a free card while some draws are out there. The hijack is last to act. He bets 280. I consider check raising. Instead, I call. Under the gun folds right away. Under the gun +1 calls, which I find really interesting after he checked initially. He probably only has a 1-pair hand at best. He could have a flush draw or something like 2 overs with backdoor draws. 3 of us make it to the turn. It's the 3 of clubs, a blank other than the fact that 6-5 is a straight. All of us check. This indicates that the hijack isn't very strong and won't have 2-pair or better. Ace-10 will often be the best hand. The river is the 7 of diamonds. The flush draw gets there and the board pairs. I don't like seeing it still. We could have the winner. I put out a small bet of 500 in an attempt to get the showdown cheaply. On rare occasions, I'll do this with something close to the nuts as well. I said earlier that I didn't think under the gun +1 would be all that strong after check calling the flop bet as the pre-flop raiser, yet here he is raising me on the river to 2160. He'll never have a full house in this spot because he would have either bet the flop himself or at least check raise with a set after the hijack bet and I called. Also, I have a 10, making it even less likely that the opponent has a full house. The best hand under the gun +1 will have is a flush. Some of the time, I'd expect him to bet diamond draws on the flop as well, so maybe he's just turning something like ace-king offsuit with the ace of diamonds into a bluff after seeing my blocker bet. The hijack folds. I contemplate flatting because I'm not buying what under the gun +1 is selling. The problem is that there's a moderate chance that the opponent has what he's representing, which is a flush. I can still have flushes, and I can have full houses or even quads. If I had pocket 10s or another set, I might have played it the same way with just a call on the flop and the last player to act bets. Under the gun +1 only has 4,800 total. I don't see how he can call a shove with almost anything that he played this way because a 3-bet jam looks incredibly strong and there's only one combo of pocket 10s available for him to have. I go with my gut and I announce that I'm all in for 4,800 effective. It's one of the gutsiest plays that I've ever made. I'm not advocating that anyone else do this. I've turned a hand that has plenty of value into a bluff. It's not entirely necessary, but it's something that I don't mind doing when I put my opponents on a capped range and I have good removal. You saw me bluff shove earlier in the 5-10 game with King Queen and it didn't work out. If it doesn't work out here, I've gotten destroyed today for one of my biggest losses ever. As the opponent is tanking longer and longer, it's becoming more likely that he didn't raise my river bet as a bluff. After 45 seconds, the player eventually folds. Our assessment of the situation pays off. We get a massive 3-bet river shove through to take down an enormous pot when the opponent didn't have to call too much more to get to showdown. Our story was convincing enough. This feels amazing to win. It's one of my absolute favorite hands that I've ever played. Our stack climbs over 16,000. We're in for slightly less than 13,000. We haven't played very long, but it's been an action-packed session with several huge and exciting hands. We stay for an additional 40 minutes before booking a nice win.